Look, we are in the middle of a series. We launched it last week, and we're preaching it tonight, and we're kind of officially launching what it means to have a seat at the table, and that's the series we're in at the moment. And I just wanted to get straight into it. I wanted to just pray. My prayer tonight was that people, maybe online or in their house, would really be inspired by what it means to follow Jesus, get to know Jesus, or be like Jesus in this time and age. And I think a good time to preach this topic was around Christmas, where there's chaos and craziness and just things are changing really quick. And so I just wanted to read us the premise of this series that I'm going to preach tonight. And if you want to follow along or if you're online, it will come up there on the screen. But we're reading out of Luke 14, 7-14. And this is the Message version. And it's titled, Invite the Misfits. And so it says here, and this is Jesus speaking. He's come along to a place, a wedding, a banquet. He's there. And this is what Jesus says. And it says here under the Invite the Misfits. He went on to tell a story, this is Jesus speaking, to the guests around the table, noticing how each had tried to elbow into the place of honor. And he said this, when someone invites you to dinner, don't take the place of honor because somebody more important than you might have been invited by the host. Then he says here, then they will come along and the host will call you out in front of everyone and say, hey, listen here, brother, sister, cousin. You were in the wrong position, my friend, and you might have to move and go down to the back. And then it says here, the guests, and it says here, but when you are embarrassed, you'll have to make your way to the last seat left. In verse 10, it says here, when you're invited to dinner again, sit in the last place. Then when the host comes, he may very well say, hey, friend, come sit at the front. Then and then it says here, I love the Bible, it says, then the dinner guests will have something to talk about. And Jesus says here, what I'm saying is, if you walk around all high and mighty, you're going to end flat on your face. But if you're content by being just simply yourself, you will become more than yourself. And then then it says here, then he will turn to the host, and he said, this is what Jesus said to the host. And maybe Jesus is speaking to some of us in this day and age and what's happening right now. And he says, the next time you put on a dinner, don't just invite your friends and family and rich neighbors, the kind of people that will return the favor. Invite people that will never get invited, the misfits from the wrong side of the tracks, and you will experience a blessing. They won't be able to return the favor, but the favor will be returned. Oh, will it be returned? And you know, we're coming into this serious topic of what it means for people to sit around the table. And I just wanted to clarify tonight, and just as we get like this semi-launch to this, it's not just a physical table. It's your spiritual table. It's your emotional table. It's how you treat people in the shops this season. It's how you treat your neighbors. It's how you treat people that come into your space. But I thought this topic was so fitting to the heart of Heart House because I just wanted to clarify as we launch into this part that at Heart House, first and foremost, and maybe this is a news flash for you or you might just be discovering this online, first and foremost, our main objective is to become more like Jesus. Nothing more, nothing less. It's to understand how Jesus thought, how he allowed people to sit at his table, how Jesus worked it out. And this topic covers that because in my heart and my mind and my understanding, weren't we all misfits once? Yeah. That God invited us to his table. Yeah. You know, that's the incredible thing about this topic. We're talking about how to invite people to our table, yet we were all misfits once, and God allowed us to sit at his table. You know, tonight I'm going to be preaching 3 points. The first point tonight I put down for this premise of what it means to sit around the table is as a church, as a visitor, as someone that's new, including myself, we have to learn to love. Now, this is a touchy subject because in this day and age and in this time, the season gets crazy. Life gets crazy. The church gets crazy. Going to town for 5 minutes. It's crazy. But God was just speaking to me tonight about a church, maybe a people that in this season learn to love deeper than ever before. Learn to love those in the craziness deeper before. Because my concern was, and this is God speaking to me, that a lot of us and a lot of the world have simply lost their love and compassion for the people in it. And I was thinking about this, and I'm like, okay, we're going to talk to the church about learning to love. And I wanted you to just hear this revelation I got. The whole compassion and love for the neighbor, or for the people around us, or for the people in the church, or outside the church, or whatever it is basically the backbone of our belief system. See, Jesus came to earth for one reason, and that was to bring people that were far from God close. And how he demonstrated this was how he looked after the very people that were far from God. Now, I want you to understand this premise before I preach this part because it's important. Jesus never came back to earth and said, you'll be lucky to sit at my table because my Father in heaven, he's the boss, he's God, and we have to do what he says. No, Jesus came back and said, hey, those that are far from God, those that are not at the table, those are sitting at the very furthest place of honor. Jesus then said, I want to invite you to a place where you could get to know the most graceful and glorious God in the whole entire world. And Jesus showed us really quick what it meant to learn to love. Because love was beyond the ones that could return the favor. It was beyond those that have done the right thing by us. It was beyond all that. It was loving those that were the misfits. And I love this, and I know that maybe I'm rocking the boat of our belief system in the gospel, but the reality of Jesus Christ was mainly about how we treat others, not mainly about how we just treat God. He was very big on this. He was like, hey, a lot of people don't belong on this table, but I've come to piece it together so you can sit on the table. And I believe that if we are a church that believes that we should be more like Jesus Christ, then we are going to allow our church and this table to learn to love. This season, I want to encourage you to learn to love. I've got some scripture here that I'd love for you to follow along with. But it says here in Proverbs 4:23, because it knew this was coming for us. It says here, above all else, guard your heart. For everything, church, everything online, everything you do flows from it. Now, you can be a faith-abiding citizen that loves God, reads the Word of God, and you might be even new tonight, and you're like, I don't know what this is all about, I don't know what church is, I don't get it. But at the end of the day, God's speaking to a group of people, maybe the whole human race, and saying, above everything you do, above the amount of times you come to church, about the amount of times you read the Bible, about how many times you pray to me, above all else, you must guard your heart. Because everything you do on this earth will flow from it. And so my point tonight is we need to learn to love. If we want to let people sit at our table, emotionally, spiritually, or physically, we need to learn how to love. And so the question is, why is this passage so important to this topic? You know, I thought about this concept today. I'm going to turn this around here for you just to kind of see. And I want to demonstrate a real thing that happens in every single person's life, including my own. And I kind of practiced this week because I was like, I want to get this right and I want it to make sense. But I realized really quick, and anyone that's been alive for longer than 10 minutes, you realize life happens. Now, it's not a secret. Things go bad. Things go wrong. Let me just get vulnerable with you for a second. People hurt us. We hurt each other. People let us down. People rip us off. People weren't there when we thought they were. There is a bunch of valid reasons, and I am not downplaying the story tonight. Things go wrong. But this is what happens in our lives. And I thought about this for my own life. If I want to become more like Jesus, and I want to learn to love, and I want to let people sit at my table, when those things happen, when the crisis happens, when those things go wrong, I either make a conscious decision for my heart to slightly move this way, or I make a decision for it to move this way. Now, don't all clap at once, because the reality is this isn't just for people that don't believe in Christ. This is the reality of every single person, whether you believe or not. In fact, I think some of us that believe are going to struggle with this a lot more. Because the reality is being good with God is the easy part, but to be good with others becomes the sliding scale of our heart. Now, I'm not here to downplay a story, but you might be here right now and you've had a crisis. You haven't guarded your heart. Someone let you down. A very valid reason. And you took a step this way. And unfortunately, it happened again. And I'm scrambling here. I'm like, do I step this way again? Or do I try to guard my heart and maybe step a little bit? Our whole entire lives are torn between these two things. Believer or not. It's stuck between this and that. And I'll tell you what's important. God knew this, and it's written in Proverbs. It says here, guard your heart, because if you, above all else, because if you're not careful of this, you're heading this way over that way. It doesn't say guard your life because you avoid bad things happening. No, it says when bad things happen, guard your heart. Now, if we want to be Jesus followers and we want to love God and we want people to sit at our table, we have to guard our hearts. Otherwise, we sit here, which, if I'm honest with you, I had a couple of days this week sitting here, if you want to know where the message came from. But I realized really quick that this is an empty table. This is a table no one else wants to sit at. This is a table no one else wants to turn up to. And the crisis still happened. We still had a time where our hearts were wounded and hurt, and we understand that people go through bad things. But this is what the gospel is about. It's about when those hard things happen, do I step this way or do I step this way? Now, somebody tonight's a believer, and they're saying, man, I believe in God, and I'm sitting over here. And that's okay, because we're going to talk about how God moves us up to here. But the reality is this table is empty. And this table, my friend, is very, very full. This is a place where the most wounded, hurt, broken people can sit, and the table's so packed you can't even find a seat at the table. Now, it's not connected to whether we love God or not. It's not connected to whether we... My church is doing this series about around the table, and I won't beat my car or stick my finger up at the car in front of me during Christmas. This is a guard your heart, and Christmas will test it. Family will test it. The church will test it. Everything in your life determines which way you will step, and it's ever so slightly. I've seen it my whole life, and even in my own life where things go wrong. Church stuff, home stuff, it goes wrong, and we take the conscious decision to move somewhere. It all comes down to how we guard our hearts. And this is a very empty table. This is a very full table. And our church is moving towards the full table. Next year, this Christmas, tomorrow, when you turn up to work, remember this image and you say to yourself, Sam wasn't denying the crisis, my church isn't denying the hardships, my church isn't against us going through the valley of shadow of death, but it definitely is for us making the right heart decision to move into the right table. I want to be here. Do I spend time here? Of course. Don't tell anyone. But I know sometimes people can be here for 10 years. They can be here for a long time. Try do it. Just you can sit there for 10 minutes, but just know the table's empty. Get back up and go here, because this table is full. And our church is going to be the full table. Your life's going to be the full table. Everything you do will be full, and I'll tell you why. Because when life hits, every time life hits, our hearts slightly move in one direction. And I'm believing tonight those that have been hit hard and those that are feeling empty and those that are sitting at empty tables and they didn't know why. It could be because you're here, and by the grace of God tonight, I'm telling you, I'm reminding you that God's calling you to a better place, a better seat, and He's calling you to the front of the road. You might have started here, but you certainly, my friend, can end here. Learn to love. It's a hard one because it flows through everything. Remember the guard your heart, because it does everything you do. Don't think this is not connected to love thy neighbor. This goes down to husband, wife, kids, boss, pastor. It goes everywhere. And this is the line. And as your pastor, first one to admit it, I'm going to try my hardest to always move here. Doesn't mean I won't end up there some days, but I am conscious of my heart moving. Guard your heart. Now, you're probably saying, what's this got to do with the table? It's got a lot to do with it, because when you are here, it's a packed place. I'm talking about in your homes, your heart. You know what? When I'm here, someone just has to not put their blinker on at the roundabout, and I am unchristianed for 15 minutes. But when I'm here, someone could slap me in the face, and I'll go, here's the other cheek. Because the heart is guarded from those things. You know, the second thing tonight I want to talk to you about is learn to listen. And we touched on this last week. We had a brief moment where I talked about this. There's something that's dear to our heart. To really accept people at our table, whether that's emotional, that's physical, or that's spiritual, we have to learn to listen. And a lot of the time, there's a lot of people out there, there's a lot of ideas, there's a lot of lifestyles that most of us will never agree with. Like, we just won't accept it. It's like, you do your thing, I'm not going to listen to you because I don't want a bar of it. And the thing is, we become this kind of people or place that justifies why people can't sit at our table. Because we don't agree with it, we don't agree with that. And I thought to God, I'm like, God, this is a really random point. Because sure, there's people out there that say things that we shouldn't listen to, and people do things that we shouldn't listen to, and all this yada, yada, yada. And God said, but then what happens is we turn our principles into being someone that doesn't listen to something we don't like. Now, why this is really bad, this is really challenging for me, is because if we get into a place where we don't listen to things we don't like, then we will never listen to anything. I could be saying something right now, and you could be like, I don't like that. And it could be good for your soul. You could have someone in this room tonight that encourages you or loves you, and you go, well, I'm used to not liking that. So you switch off. This whole concept of listening is so much deeper than just someone at your table. And I wanted to, come on, I'm preaching tonight. If you want to be someone that has a full table, and I'm not just talking physical, I'm talking mentally and spiritually, then you have to be willing to stop and listen. Probably asking, why is that so important? Well, I had a conversation with Kirsty about this, and I said, Kirsty, I'm going to talk about this. What do you think? She said, I don't know. Telling everyone just to shut up sometimes. She said, maybe change it to zip it. So I went to God. He said, no, you can use shut up. No, Jake, that was a joke. God said, even though we live in a world and we live in a place, and Christmas is one of those things that we're going into that, a lot of people will be doing things we don't want to hear. A lot of lifestyles we don't want to listen to. A lot of things will be going on that we won't invite people to the table because of those reasons. Teaches us to then not listen to things we don't like. And the problem with that is that if we're trying to get close to God, God will sometimes say things to you that you won't like. Sometimes you will hear a message that's good for your soul, and you will like, I don't like that. I don't like what someone so said. I don't like what I heard in the scripture. I'll just kind of rip that page out. We become accustomed to not being open to things that we don't not like. And so this happens on a spiritual level with God, but it also happens at an emotional level. Sometimes people will come to you and they have a story to tell, and because you don't like the story, you won't listen. And James 1:9 touches on this subject. He brings it in, and it says here, it says, dear brothers and sisters, hey church, hey world, hey whoever's listening, whoever can hear my voice, take note of this. Everybody should be quick to listen and slow to speak, and also slow to become angry. You know, if we're going to invite people to our table, we have to be willing, whether we're believers or not, to just listen. Listen to sometimes the story that you wish you could just go, how could you do that? Pull it together. But maybe that's not the answer that person needs. Maybe someone will sit at your table and you know that what they're doing is destroying their life, and you just want to kind of throw scripture verses. Sometimes we just have to listen, because it teaches us that when we go to God's table, that we listen to him. It teaches us when we go to the emotional table of our friends and family, we listen to them. We are quick to listen and very slow to speak. And this week, my boy Blaze Minturn learnt this hand by hand, what it means not to listen. I've been trying to teach Blaze how to swim. And I've been taking him to the pool. And I'm my goal is to get him swimming. And I've got this goal of getting him swimming. And this week, we became very close. We took the floaties off. And I allowed him to kind of jump in the water. He was jumping in the water and swimming a little bit. But the problem is with Blaze is that he didn't want to listen to me at all. So I'm hey, Blaze, if we stand here on the edge and we jump in the water, and he's going, yada, yada, la, 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 and he's dancing, and he's just not interested. And I'm come on, Blaze, hello. And he turns his bum, and he's shaking his bum at me. And I'm Blaze, trust me, what I've got to say is really important. He's no, I'm not going to listen. I'm cool. I'm good with it. I'm fine. And then he jumps in the water, and the only direction he went was down. And I'm oh, hello, kids. Blaze jumps in the water and he sinks. And I get him back up and he's I don't know what happened, Dad. I said, Blaze, listen to me. Anyway, I put him on the side of the pool. I start talking to him. He starts looking around. He's look, Dad, a bird. I'm Blaze, listen to me. Anyway, he jumps in the water. Guess what happened? He sunk right down the bottom again. Now, this repetitively happened for the whole afternoon. Anyway, the next day I said, that's it. Put your floaties back on. He didn't like it for a day. But the day after, I decided to take his floaties off again. And this day, Blaze decided that he would listen. I said, Blaze, what you got to do is you got to roll your arms like this, and you got to float, and you got to think. And he jumps in the water, and would you believe it or not, he began to swim. And I'm sitting there going, that is so interesting. Because God's hey, talk about listening, talk about this. And I realized that it wasn't even Blaze's ability to swim that made him swim. It was actually his ability to listen to the instructions of how to swim. And I'm believing tonight there's some people in this place that might have shut the world off, shut church off, shut pastors off, shut maybe even your own wife, spouse, and family off. But I'm believing if we stop and listen, we will learn to swim again. We'll learn to float again. We'll learn to be okay again. You know what? You'll be surprised what you can hear from someone that has a different belief system to you. It's okay to listen. And listening is part of the table, but it's part of God's table. It's part of every table. Sometimes you just have to listen to God. Listen to the table we meet here, which is Sundays. Listen to people we don't agree with. Listen to the voice of Jesus. Sometimes, heck, we have to listen to people that the rest of the world won't listen to. Because listening displays the heart of Jesus. Jesus was good at listening. And side note, some people just want to be heard. Doesn't mean it's right or wrong. Doesn't mean we have to give them the answers. There is people out there right now, maybe online or maybe in your space or in your community, at your table that just want to be heard. And so my final point tonight, before we all melt, is learn to learn. To invite people to our table, to be a church that invites people to the table, to be a person that invites people to the table, we learn to love, which means we love like Jesus did. We love like Christ did. We move away from this and we go to this. And then the second thing is once we get to the table, once we're sitting there and we're here and you're here tonight or maybe you're at home or whatever it is, then we begin to listen. I said to Kirsty, should I say this tonight? And she's like, yeah. I said, I am very bad at this second one because sometimes I sit at the table and I just want to talk and have my opinion and maybe it's the Minturn in me. But God's been really speaking to me about just listening and just sitting there and listening. And I already feel richer and more empowered when I just listen to some stories and some people's lives. And I don't agree with sometimes. Sometimes we can listen to opposite sides of our belief and you will learn something and you'll be inspired by something. But the last one here is learn to learn. And the world is full of things and people you and I will never, ever understand. And we will never, ever get the chance to understand. And I just wanted to say this tonight, that sometimes some things just don't make sense. And I'm not here to preach it. I'm not here to say it online. I'm not here to say, hey, church, everything needs to make sense when you follow God, and everything needs to make sense before the table's prepped, and everything needs to make sense before we invite someone to our house, and everything needs to make sense before we even leap out in faith. The reality is, learn that not everything will make sense, and you won't understand everything. And you and me and anyone online in this church has to be okay with that. We have to be fully okay. We have to be fully settled. We have to be fully in the faith of God to say, even though I invite things I don't understand to my table, that I don't have to understand to keep them there. That I don't need to understand why they're where they are. And it says this in Proverbs 3:5 as I begin to wrap this up tonight. That it says here, and this is speaking to people that believe, and this is speaking to people that are trying to find out what God's all about. It says here, trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding. You know, this is, and like I said, I'm trying not to perish up here. But this is the reality of the gospel. This is the reality of this topic. This is the reality of our church next year. That there's people we need to love, and there's people we need to listen to, and there's people that we just have to accept that you and I will never ever understand. There's some people right now, and you're sitting here or you're online and you're going, well, I don't think people could ever understand me. And that's a reality. It's not some secret. It's not, we're not a church, I'm not a pastor saying, yeah, well, we have to learn everything, guys. We have to know everything to a T and understand and be professionals at understanding. No. There's a lot of things as a pastor I don't understand. There's a lot of things God does that I don't understand. There's a lot of things that happen in people's lives in this place, and I just don't understand. But I want to say this now because God brings in the faith element, and that says, do not lean on your own understanding. And why this is so important is because I believe in this place tonight, tables will be packed with people we don't understand. Your worlds will be packed. Your sitting area, your house, your emotional city, wherever you're sitting will be packed because you don't have to understand to invite people to the table. You know, this really warped ideology we get, and I don't know if it's in church world or in the real world or wherever world it comes from, but we think that we have to understand someone or something before we invite them to our table. But it's the table where we get to maybe understand. And a lot of us are going to, I'll get real with you, a lot of us are going to do kindness in the next couple of weeks. And you won't get the response that you thought. A lot of you will do nice things for people. And they might shrug it off and think, oh man, the church set me up. Sam told me to go give out a free coffee. And the person said, I don't care about that. Because the reality is you'll never understand, and we can't expect the result that we want by the goodness that we do. And so sometimes the challenge of inviting someone to the table is that we justify it because we say we don't know them or we don't want to learn to know them and we don't understand it, so we'll just kind of dismiss that whole part of it. But Jesus was speaking to me and speaking to me this week about never judging a book by its cover. And maybe you're here today and you feel like that you're that book, and I don't know if you think that maybe people don't understand you or you'll never be able to explain your life. Can I just say here at Hardash, you don't have to. Like, you don't have to come here and you don't have to be online and explain why you are the way you are. Or explain why it went wrong, or explain that maybe why you're sitting here. You don't have to do that because we're going to learn that we don't need to know everything. And we'll accept you for who you are. And my prayer tonight is that people will sit at our table. I'm talking about the Hardash table. I'm talking about the people in Hardash's table. They will sit at your table and you won't understand and you won't get it and you won't get the reaction you wanted. But somewhere in the mix of learning that you know nothing about the person, they will discover a real and honest relationship with Jesus Christ. Because if there's someone that does understand, that is Jesus Christ, and that is God of all gods up in heaven. He understands you. He understands this. He understands the very people that might snob you off. In fact, He's the only one that understands it. In fact, in the next 12 months, I might even say things that you don't understand. But you sit here tonight and you trust that God understands it. And you might come in here tonight, or you might come in the next couple of weeks, or you might even come next year and go, man, I got some issues, I got some stuff that no one will understand. And maybe you're right. But the goodness of God, He understands. And so in us accepting that we don't know, and that anyone can come, and that anyone can sit, and that anyone could be at the table, and we don't have to know, and the more they could be all the misfits. They could be the ones that don't return the favor. That we sit there going, it's okay. You know how refreshing it is that a church, I'm speaking to online, that there's a church that doesn't know all the answers? We're okay with that. I don't have all the answers. Why did God do that? I don't know. Well, you're the pastor, figure it out. I don't know. For your life, it's okay not to know. Come on, I'm setting someone free tonight. You've wanted all the answers, and you wanted to learn, and that suffocated you, and then it suffocates your table. Because if you don't know everything about you, then you don't know everything. And it's not here, we're okay with not knowing everything. And I'm okay with just trusting God. And I'm okay with not landing on my own understanding. And because of that heart and because of that ability, I let anyone sit at the table, face tattoos, sexual preference. It doesn't even matter who sits at this table. Because I don't need to understand. I just need to invite. Come on, someone's feeling freedom tonight. I believe it in this place. Even for yourself, you're sitting there going, man, no one could ever understand me. And that's probably true. But there's a God up there that loves you so dearly. And He understands you. And tonight He invites you to His table. He says, hey you, misfit. Wrong side of the tracks. Maybe you're a Christian and your heart's on the wrong side of the tracks. God says, hey, there's a spot here for you. And the gospel is on the pillars of this message. Never stop people from sitting at your table because you aren't willing to learn that you haven't learned everything about them. And never use that as an excuse to say, well, because I don't understand it, they can't come into my space. Let's never forget the whole basis of the gospel was a God that took a broken world and a broken place, and He said, hey, I'm a provider, table for you. Come on, I'm preaching to the believers tonight. There was a table that was made for you, and somewhere in the transition and somewhere in the Christmas season and somewhere in the walk of following God, we forgot that God prepared a table for us so that we could prepare a table for others. This isn't a friendly little nice message because we've got to be good Christians. This is the pillar of our belief system. Jesus came back not to show us what it meant to love God, but to show us what it meant to love our neighbors. And He showed that by inviting us to His table. You know, it's hard because I'm a believer and I struggle with this. And I know believers that struggle with this. We justify why we can't forgive. We justify why we can't sit at the table. We justify why we can't be a part of something. But the justification leaves when you realize the price that was paid. And God invited you to the table well and truly before we had the honor of inviting anyone else. And so I'm expecting in the next 3 weeks, there's people in this room, your tables are going to be packed. Your emotional tables, your physical tables, and your spiritual tables. People are going to hear from God in the next couple of weeks like they've never heard from God before. People are going to have people in their circles at work that used to tick them off that are not even going to bother them anymore. But you're going to be set free from this. You're not going to be part of the world system anymore. You're going to be part of the gospel. Come on, I'm believing for a church tonight that doesn't just have to understand to accept, that doesn't have to understand to invite, that doesn't have to understand to introduce people to Jesus Christ. I'm talking to believers tonight. Come on. We are in this. The gospel isn't some fairy tale, cross my heart and hope I go to heaven. This is the reality that we have to invite people to our table because God invited us to His. Full stop. And I know some people in this room, your heart's on fire right now. And you're like, yeah, I'm not going to be part of that. This church, we're going to be part of that. We're going to open the doors. We're going to open it for the sick, the lame, the broken, and be okay with whoever sits at our table. This isn't just a Christmas message. This is the message of what our church stands for. Anyone and everyone can sit at our table. And so I'm believing this because you are our church. This is our church. We're together. We're the body of Christ. And if you're new, welcome. If you're semi-new, welcome again. If you're locked in, then let's do this. Because I'm believing right now people in this room are set free. It doesn't become an option. We just are going to constantly move towards this. And on that journey, we're inviting everyone with us. The neighbor, the neighbor's cat, the doctor, your frenemy, you know that frenemy, the person you're friends with but you don't like them secretly at work, you know that frenemy? We're inviting them all here. We're going to invite people because Jesus will set us free as we allow our lives to set others free. This is where we're going. Have a seat at the table. Take a seat at the table. You're welcome. Everyone's welcome. We're welcome. And next week, I can't wait to preach part 2. So let's stand tonight and let's believe in this song as we hear the words of what God said over our lives, that people will be set free in this place and people will open their tables so wide that even the most broken people in this room will have tables that are so full. You have to go to Bunnings to buy more chairs. Amen. Come on, let's stand tonight and let's worship God and see what He can do as we expand our tables.